The movie begins by showing the year 2023. Everyone was going about their usual routines, some heading to work, others off to school, and the most common way to get around was by taking the train. Normally, people didn't interact much with strangers, but on this day, they found themselves squeezed in tightly with unfamiliar faces as they got on the train. Despite being in such close quarters, they all went about their simple activities, hardly paying attention to the people around them. They thought it would be just another ordinary day, like any other. Little did they know that today was going to be different. As the train moved forward, suddenly, all the passengers' phones started beeping with an earthquake warning. The train started to shake unnaturally, and the vibrations grew stronger by the second. The passengers stumbled and fell as the train entered a tunnel. In the chaos that followed, nobody knew what was happening. Panic spread, and people hurriedly made their way out of the carriage. But their confusion only grew as they found themselves surrounded by dense vegetation, as if they were lost in a forest. The absence of any signal made it impossible to make emergency calls using their cell phones. Yuto Shirahama, one of the passengers, happened to be a firefighter. As soon as the chaos began, he sprang into action, concerned about everyone's safety. He started checking on the other passengers, making sure no one was hurt during the sudden event. Luckily, he wasn't alone in this situation. Sadie Hatano, a female passenger, recognized Yuto. She knew him as a firefighter from a high school. In the meantime, back at the train station, the police were baffled by what had happened. 2 train cars had mysteriously disappeared and were nowhere to be found. They couldn't wrap their heads around how something as big and heavy as a train car could just vanish without a trace. Even though they went down the tunnel to investigate, there were no clues left behind. Yuto and the others decided to take matters into their own hands and explore the tunnel for answers. But what they encountered at the end of the tunnel was mind-boggling. There was nothing there, no buildings, no signs of civilization. When they tried to go up the hill, they were met with a vast desert and rocky terrain. Confusion swept over them as they had no idea where they had ended up. When the passengers tried to make sense of their situation, some speculated that the train carriage might have been thrown to an unknown location. It was bizarre because there were no signs of civilization around. No towns, no people, and no way to communicate with the outside world, except for the train tunnel itself. During the ordeal, they managed to identify 46 passengers, but there was one man, Naoya Keishima, who seemed to be hiding something about his identity. Despite waiting for 7 long hours, there was no sign of rescue, not even the sound of a helicopter. As time passed, hunger became an issue for Reina Wadab. Feeling desperate for food, she secretly searched through Naoya's bag, hoping to find something to eat. However, what she discovered instead were scissors and letters from prison. This led Reina to accuse Naoya of being a criminal and an ex-convict. Naoya didn't deny it, stating that in a situation like this, they couldn't trust each other as they didn't know each other's backgrounds. He believed that there could be dangerous criminals among them. While the hours passed and night fell, there was still no sign of the rescue team. This situation led some of the passengers to feel neglected or wonder if they had somehow ended up in a completely different world. To the west and east, all they saw were deserts and ravines, making them wonder how they could possibly survive without water, food, or medicine. Their money was useless here, adding to the sense of uncertainty and despair. Amidst the growing unease, Yuto, the firefighter, remained resolute in his responsibility to protect and save the lives of everyone on the train. He had made a promise to his seniors to do everything he could to save as many lives as possible. His determination impressed Seti, who had observed Yuto's steadfast attitude before. Back when they were in school, Yuto had taught Sei how to handle difficult situations, just like how he simulated dealing with fires. Sei learned not to give up, even in tough times like this. They simply needed to focus on doing what they could with the resources available. Feeling hurt and disappointed by Reina's accusations and the suspicions of the other passengers, Naoya decided to venture out alone, hoping to find some clue about their situation. But as he walked, he unintentionally headed towards a dangerous abyss. He slipped and found himself hanging on the edge of a deep ravine, clinging to tree roots for dear life. With time running out, fortunately, Yuto and Sei arrived just in time to rescue him from the perilous situation. When the passengers continued to explore their surroundings, they stumbled upon some intriguing clues. Yachi noticed a tower in the distance and realized it was a tower that was supposed to be completed in 2026, a few years from their current time of 2023. Kazuma, on the other hand, found a can of drinks with a production date of 2026, which was a baffling discovery since they were still in 2023. Things got even more puzzling when botanist Shadai Kato made a remarkable find. He came across transgenic plants, something that would require 30 years of research to develop. This shocking revelation seemed to suggest that they had somehow been transported 30 years into the future. The situation was beyond reason and comprehension. With no water, no food, and no means of communication, they were left with no choice but to face the reality of being stranded in this unknown place. Everything felt eerily still, as if time itself had come to a standstill, leaving them in what seemed like a suspended world, disconnected from their own time. In the year 2023, news about the mysterious disappearance of 2 train cars, 5 and 6, made headlines. The government and police were actively investigating this unusual incident, which had left a total of 100 passengers unaccounted for. While the stranded passengers waited for rescue, their situation became dire. They started to feel the effects of thirst and hunger, with only a few supplies remaining, clearly not enough to sustain them. Yudo, being the resourceful firefighter that he was, came up with an idea to tackle the water problem. He used a small tarp to collect water on top of a train carriage, hoping that if it rained, they could drink the water. If rain was scarce, they could at least gather dew to quench their thirst. Time was of the essence, as they were aware of the survival rule. Humans can't survive without air for more than 3 minutes, without water for more than 3 days, and without food for more than 3 weeks. Having been trapped for 2 days already, they had just 1 more day to find a water source they could consume before dehydration would start taking its toll on all the passengers. The next morning, the tension in the group was palpable. Shodai suggested that if there were so many plants around, there must be a source of water nearby. So, they decided to explore the direction they hadn't taken before, with Yudo, Sai, and Naoya joining him. They hurriedly made their way through the forest to the north, navigating the challenging terrain. After a long and arduous walk, Naoya made a vital discovery. He found a toad and noticed the soil was damp. This indicated that a water source was close by. Their determination and perseverance paid off when they finally stumbled upon a flowing water source. It was a moment of relief and triumph for the group, as they could now quench their thirst. Amidst this discovery, Naoya opened up to say about the letter from prison sent by his brother. He revealed that the day they arrived in this strange world was actually the day his brother was released from a 2-year prison sentence. Their family history was filled with difficulties, with an abusive father and their mother leaving them behind. Despite the challenges, Naoya decided to take care of his brother and worked hard to achieve his dream of becoming a hairdresser. However, his brother's involvement in wrongdoings caused him disappointment. Yet through it all, Naoya genuinely loved his brother and cared deeply for the people around him. As Sei listened to Naoya's story, she began to understand the true nature of the man behind his stubborn exterior. She realized that he was a good-hearted person who cared deeply for his loved ones. Unbeknownst to Sei, Naoya had admired her from a distance before. It was during one moment when he captured a photograph of a beautiful rainbow. At that very instant, Naoya fell in love with Sei at first sight. However, he kept his feelings to himself, convinced that Sei already had feelings for Yudo. In their hopeless situation, a sudden heavy downpour brought a sense of life and hope back to the passengers. They quickly gathered tools to collect the water, but they knew that water alone wouldn't be enough to sustain them. Finding food was crucial. Fortunately, Shodai, being a botanist, stepped up to help. He had the knowledge to identify which wild plants were safe to eat and which ones were dangerous. This expertise proved to be invaluable as many passengers began to search for edible plants, thanks to Shodai's guidance. During a conversation, Rina offered some fruit she had found to Sei to try. However, shortly after eating it, Sei began to moan in pain and fell to the ground. Panicked, Reina immediately called for help. Naoya was the first to respond, and he quickly instructed Sai to spit out what she had eaten. It turned out that Reina had mistakenly given her a dangerous plant containing solanine, which resembled a similar-looking safe plant. Fortunately, Sai had only taken a small bite, so her life was not in danger. In the wake of this incident, Naoya took charge and guided the passengers to work together. They collected or created their own cooking tools, such as using iron cans as pots and bamboo mats for eating, and some even sharpened their ATM cards to use as knives. With Naoya's direction, they prepared a homemade soup, which surprisingly turned out to be delicious. As they shared this meal, they also began to open up about their backgrounds. No one wanted to keep secrets anymore, realizing that everyone had their own good side. United in their efforts, they all worked together to face the challenges of this unknown world, with the hope that one day they would find a way back to their own time and place. The next day, as they set out to search for food, Naoya noticed a stranger passing by. Soon after, they heard a groaning sound, and they discovered that Shodai had been injured by a puncture. They realized they needed to sew up the wound, but the only one with medical knowledge was Yuto. Yuto was initially hesitant, but Naoya convinced him that they couldn't afford to lose any lives. Determined to save Shodai, Yuto mustered the courage to perform the procedure. They used plants with antibacterial properties, which they had collected based on Shodai's records, to prevent infection and inflammation. Shodai remained unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights, but thanks to their efforts and the medicinal plants, he gradually began to recover. Finally, he opened his eyes again. The incident raised concerns as it was clear that there were others besides them in this strange place, and the identity of the person who had stabbed Shodai remained a mystery. Following Yachi's advice from the security company, they came up with a plan to capture the perpetrator responsible for Shodai's injury by setting up a trap. Despite their initial misunderstandings about Naoya, everyone started to see his true character. They couldn't deny that Naoya had played a significant role in saving the lives of both Sai and Shodai. Looking back, they realized that he had acted like a caring and attentive older brother. Moreover, they noticed that Naoya had a unique skill set, and he willingly helped out in various ways. He even used his expertise to cut the hair of female passengers, including Sai, who started paying more attention to him. As they spent more time together, the passengers began to appreciate Naoya's genuine kindness and abilities, making their bond grow stronger in the face of adversity. After a short while, they heard the trap they had set go off, and Yuto and Sai hurried to the location. They found a boy caught in the trap, but he managed to escape and tried to run away to the south. Yuto and Sai chased after him, but their pursuit came to a halt when they reached a river. The boy told them he was going to call his mother and asked them to wait there until he returned. Naoya, who had followed them, was also present at the scene. While waiting, Yuto opened up about his past as a firefighter. He recounted an incident where his actions without permission caused an accident that injured his senior. As a result, his senior was left hospitalized and unable to walk again. Yuto had carried the weight of guilt for that incident ever since, blaming himself for the consequences of his actions. Before long, the boy actually returned and invited them to follow him. To their surprise, they discovered another stranded train carriage in a place they had never been before. It turned out that passengers from Carriage 6 had experienced a similar incident. In this new carriage, they were warmly welcomed by a person named Shunsuke Yamamoto, who had assumed a leadership role among the passengers. They exchanged stories of their struggles and challenges, but there were some differences. Here, they had access to fish, and being close to a water source, they were able to create their own toilets. Then, Shunsuke introduced Naoya and his friends to the passengers of Carriage 6, including Norimasa Uemura, who worked in construction, and another guy named Tatsumi Kakagawa. It was surprising because Naoya immediately recognized Tatsumi as the mysterious man who had stabbed Shodai. Tatsumi apologized, saying he didn't know there were others besides them, and he couldn't tell if Naoya and his friends were friends or foes from the future. Sai was curious about why the passengers of Carriage 6 believed they were in the future, so she asked right away. Shunsuke explained that they found a stranded ship on the 4th day. He tried to use the ship's radio, and it connected to somewhere in the mountains of Canada. The voice on the radio said it was the year 2060. So, 3 years after their original time in 2026, an unexpected disaster struck Japan. A massive asteroid or meteorite, about 500 meters in diameter, fell into the Pacific Ocean, causing extensive flooding not only in Japan, but also in coastal cities of North and South America, as well as Australia. This catastrophe was further worsened by a series of earthquakes worldwide. The impact of the meteorite also released dust into the stratosphere, blocking sunlight and making it impossible to harvest plants. The cause of this meteorite's fall was linked to space debris around the Earth. This space debris consists of defunct satellites, discarded rockets, and other human-made objects that are no longer useful. There could be thousands of tons or millions of fragments floating around in space. When this debris collides with a large asteroid, it alters the asteroid's orbit, eventually leading it to crash into Earth, causing widespread destruction. Shunsuke believes that this disaster was neither man-made nor a natural occurrence. He sees it as fate and believes there must be a reason why they find themselves in this situation. Shunsuke thinks that by returning to their own time, they may have a chance to warn others and change the future. However, the challenge lies in figuring out how to return to their original time. The next day, Sai and Rina were exploring the forest when they stumbled upon a buried human corpse. Suddenly, they were surrounded by male passengers from Carriage 6. Rina managed to rebel and escape to inform their other friends, but Sade remained trapped. Naoya and Yudo rushed to find her, knowing they had to act fast. When Sai was being chased by the men who wanted to capture her, they had no clue about Naoya's intentions in Carriage 6. However, Naoya accidentally discovered a covered seat with a blood stain on it. Shunsuke then revealed the truth about their train's journey into the future. It turned out that among the passengers of Carriage 6, there was a criminal who was threatening everyone's lives. Shunsuke attempted to save the person, but unintentionally, the criminal ended up getting killed. After this incident, all the passengers started looking up to Shunsuke as their leader. Sai decided to take shelter inside the stranded ship, where she witnessed Shunsuke making a radio call. However, to her surprise, she noticed that the radio cable had been cut off, revealing that Shunsuke had lied to them. Later, Sai's hiding spot was discovered by Shunsuke, who had been exposed for his deceit. Shunsuke confessed that he used to be a company director, but his company went bankrupt, and that's how he ended up on the train that brought him to the future. He shared his plans to start a new life and create his own kingdom in this place. However, regarding the truth about the disaster, Shunsuke found a notebook that seemed to belong to the ship's crew. According to the information in the book, the disaster indeed occurred in 2026. Despite this revelation, Shunsuke didn't want Sai to reveal his true identity to the others. Sai was captured and confined on the ship, and despite the residents of Carriage 5 making weapons for survival, her presence remained undiscovered. Meanwhile, the citizens of Carriage 6 misunderstood the intentions of the passengers from Carriage 5, thinking they wanted to take over their territory. As predicted, the people from Carriage 6 launched an attack on Carriage 5, and a fierce battle ensued. Both groups clashed, resulting in a devastating outcome, with casualties on both sides. When Shunsuke inspected the ship, he discovered that Sai had managed to escape. When he returned, he tried to stop the commotion but was confronted by Sai, who revealed that Shunsuke had locked her inside the ship. Shunsuke admitted that he had lied about sending an SOS signal because the radio was broken. He had only wanted to give hope and unite everyone, with a plan to build a new kingdom from scratch. However, the challenge of making it a reality seemed impossible. Shunsuke handed the notebook he found on the ship to Yudo, so those who wanted to return to their original time could continue the search. Meanwhile, Kyoko and the conductor Hajime were exploring the tower. At night, they witnessed an auroral light in the sky and discovered mysterious glowing rocks. In the present time, a physicist named Professor Ryohei was investigating the mystery of the two disappeared train cars. He connected this event to the theory of space and time shifts, trying to make sense of the strange occurrences. As more people from Carriage 6 decided to join Carriage 5 in their quest to return, Kyoko's discovery of the strange glowing stone seemed to hold a clue. When illuminated by the aurora, the stone emitted light. Shodai believed it could be a fragment of a meteorite due to its characteristics. The auroras they witnessed were likely caused by interference with the cosmic magnetosphere or radiation from high-energy charged particles beyond Earth's atmosphere. Simply put, disturbances in the magnetosphere could lead to the appearance of auroras, indicating turbulence in the cosmic environment. Masaru, a child among the passengers, confessed that he saw a star falling on the day the train moved. Professor Ryohei's investigation revealed that it was actually a supernova explosion. This powerful explosion marked the end of a star's life, generating tremendous energy that could cause earthquakes, black holes, and shifts in space and time. With this new understanding, they speculated that the train carriage had crashed through a wormhole, a hypothetical tunnel-like structure in space-time. This wormhole had caused their sudden transportation to a different time. Exactly, the train carriage from the year 2023 experienced a leap of about 30 years into the future, arriving in the year 2060. This phenomenon is known as a time hole, which allowed them to travel to another time. The possibility of returning lies in finding the wormhole again, but the challenge is that they don't know what the wormhole looks like, where it is located, and when it will open again. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack. Koharu is different from the others. She doesn't want to go back because she's pregnant with her son Kazuma. Even though she's worried about causing trouble and doesn't feel ready for this new life, she runs into the forest. Kazuma and the others search for her, but the heavy rain makes it hard to find her. Sei slips and hurts herself, but luckily Naoya saves her. Sei is confused by Naoya's distant behavior and his fear of being left by everyone. Naoya seems to have experienced betrayal in the past, like what happened to his brother, which makes him think he should be alone and not expect anything from others. When Sei hears this, she hugs Naoya from behind. She understands that Naoya isn't a coward. He cares deeply about the people around him. The heavy rain and storms caused damage to the train carriages and destroyed the equipment and food they had gathered. Yachi had the idea to go out to the train tunnel, where he unexpectedly witnessed a wormhole that sucked in his wooden doll. There was a possibility that this wormhole could lead back to their home world. Shodai warned that approaching the wormhole without protection would be very dangerous. The particles around the wormhole could reach a level where their bodies might be destroyed, and the hole could slowly shrink until it closed completely. In the year 2023, Detective Ichida, who is investigating the train tunnel, stumbles upon a wooden doll that belongs to Yachi. The doll seems to have been thrown through the wormhole. Meanwhile, Naoya, who has been searching for Koharu, finally finds her sitting pensively behind some rocks. After much thought, Koharu has made up her mind to keep the child in her womb. Wormholes can open when certain natural energies like storms, earthquakes, or lightning occur, along with disturbances in the cosmic magnetosphere like auroras. To open the wormhole again, Daishi accidentally finds a buried electrical cable, and they plan to use electric current to generate a magnetic field. They need to locate the facility connected to the cable, and time is running out as their food supplies are damaged from the previous storm and getting scarce. Shodai explains that there's a chance some people may stay in this time, and if a miracle happens, they might be able to return to 2023. If they fail to prevent the 2026 disaster, only a few survivors will remain in this time. However, if they succeed in preventing it, a parallel world will be formed and space-time in this time will be isolated. In simpler terms, two separate futures will be created, and everyone will be able to continue their lives in their respective worlds. After much contemplation, Naoya decides to stay in this world. He realizes that he may be the last person left here, and he's thinking about his brother's situation. There are things he can only do if he stays in this time. While they may be able to change the future, there are also aspects of the future that might remain unchanged. They spent a lot of time digging and digging for miles, and their efforts paid off when they followed the electrical cable and discovered the buried subway electrical substation facilities. Surprisingly, the place was still intact despite being abandoned for so long, and the power source was still working. With the storm approaching, they had to make some preparations, like wrapping a cable around the carriage to create a circle. The next morning, Naoya sees the aurora in the sky, signaling the disturbed magnetic field. He knows that his decision to stay is making Seti sad, even though she has started to understand him and has feelings for him too. Sei can't bear the thought of parting ways after fighting together. Yudo is also disappointed with Naoya's choice, thinking that he's just running away from his problems with his brother. To everyone, Naoya is no longer a stranger. They owe their lives to him, and Yudo will regret not being able to save him if they can't convince him to leave. They hurry back to the train carriage while Naoya prepares to activate the electric generator. The wires connect to the shining stone, and a wormhole starts to form, offering a chance for those who want to return to their world. Yudo and Seti's words had already convinced Naoya, and he knows he's not alone anymore. However, just as Naoya is about to enter the carriage, a strong wind knocks down a tree in front of him. The people from Carriage 6 try to close the door, but Yaechi comes to Naoya's aid and helps him get in. The energy from the wormhole almost hits Yaechi, but Naoya uses his hands to push it away, enduring the pain until he finally gets into the carriage. Yaechi decides to stay behind and will remain in this world. The black energy engulfs the train carriage, and they are all sucked into the wormhole. When they realized the door was opened by a train attendant, they urgently asked what year it was. The officer informed them that it was May 1, 2026, which meant they had been transported 3 years into the future from their original year, 2023. The passengers underwent thorough examinations, including radiation tests and checks for infectious diseases. They were also given the opportunity to share their experiences with the police. They presented evidence such as beverage cans marked with the year 2026, plants and meteorite rocks from the future, and a notebook detailing the upcoming disaster on December 9, 2026. Despite all the evidence and their consistent stories, neither the police nor the government believed them. Each of them finally reunited with their families after being separated for 3 years, except Naoya, who thought no one would come for him. But to his surprise, his brother showed up with his boss to pick him up. His brother was filled with regret and apologized for his past mistakes, and he was grateful that Naoya was alive and back home. However, Naoya noticed that something was wrong with his hand. The energy from the wormhole had affected him, and now his hand shook uncontrollably, making it difficult for him to hold things normally. The others also had their own struggles and problems caused by their time in the future. Things turned out to be much more complicated than they had expected, and people found them strange when they talked about the future disasters they had witnessed. Despite everything they went through, it was difficult for others to believe their extraordinary journey. Meanwhile, Professor Ryohei got an update about an alien object heading toward Earth. They calculated its distance and speed, and it's expected to hit Earth in December 2026, confirming what the train passengers said. As for Daichi, he created a channel to share his knowledge about the future. He felt that everyone should know about it because it's about their lives. When the video was out, the public understood that an asteroid would hit their city in the future. Thanks to the video, many people were willing to help, including Kyoko, who bravely went through security forces to talk directly to the defense minister. It turned out that the minister had secretly obtained information from Professor Ryohei's research institute and verified the train survivors' testimonies. The government is getting ready to launch the FG-1 rocket to divert the asteroid's path. Everyone can only pray and hope that the plan will work, but if it doesn't, they'll have to find a safe place to take shelter, even though survival is uncertain. As time goes on, Koharu finally gives birth to her baby, and Kazuma is going to be a father. They are all overjoyed because this child's life is connected to everyone who has cared for Koharu. Shodai reports that a secret rocket will be launched next month, and they'll know the result within 3 days. If it fails, a catastrophic event will happen on December 9. Koharu shares that she has acquaintances in Switzerland, where there are disaster prevention facilities. They still have time to go there, and Yudo decides to stay in Japan to ensure they return to their correct year. He entrusts their safety to Naoya, including taking care of Seti. The news reports on the apocalypse theory, causing panic worldwide. With only 8 days left until the predicted event, some people prepare to evacuate, while others think it's a joke. The rocket has been launched on December 1, 2026, but Daichi's video doesn't reveal its success or failure. He advises everyone to think carefully to avoid regrets later. In the meantime, Naoya believes it's his destiny to travel to the future and then return to the past to teach people the value of caring for each other. He realizes that if he hadn't been saved, he wouldn't be here now. Therefore, he doesn't want to leave Yudo alone with all the responsibility. Somewhere else, Sei is seen holding her babies Koharu and Kazuma when she receives a call from Kazuma informing her that Yudo has decided to stay, and Naoya is also not with them. Sei's face becomes sad, and then she gets a call from Naoya. Naoya tells Sei that he actually knew her long before they met on the train and didn't expect to find someone as gentle as her in this world. He promises that he will never forget her. Before she can respond, Naoya hangs up, but Sei hears a voice that seems to indicate Naoya is at the train station. She rushes there and finds Naoya surprised that she could locate him. Deep in her heart, Sei always prayed that this place could be a comfortable home for Naoya, as he is the only man who has filled her heart. Naoya doesn't say anything but embraces Sei in a farewell gesture. He feels more at ease with his life thanks to meeting her. Somewhere else, Yudo is still busy helping people evacuate. Suddenly, he spots Naoya heading towards him. Yudo realizes that he owes his life to Naoya, who has saved and supported him countless times, and never once left him behind in the future. Naoya's presence not only saved lives, but also brought comfort and reassurance to everyone's hearts. Now, with the future unfolding on the train that carried their friends and loved ones, they face whatever comes next together. Professor Ryo Hai receives news about the government's rocket launch, and it seems like it might have changed the asteroid's path. As for Yeki, he lives a peaceful life in the future, content, and free from worries. The future for Naoya and Yudo remains uncertain, but they are determined to do whatever they can to help others and protect the smiles of those who still have hope. The moral of the story is that if you're ever stuck in a time-traveling adventure, just make sure you have a trusty wooden doll by your side.